Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to speak a little bit to that. One of the, that's a huge part, and I think our counselors could probably also speak to that too. Huge amount of stress that kids come to a traditional system, a big system. What project-based learning for us would do is it would take a really too large a community and break it down into something that's a little bit more personal. I come from small towns. I've taught in small town Saskatchewan, K-12 schools. That kind of environment where where everyone looks after each other is really vacant and missing from a lot of our high schools and a lot of our students. And I see this because I parked my patio office out in the foyer here, and I see students walking by, and it is just like a train station. It is absolutely like Grand Central Station. And I saw Grand Central Station a couple weeks back. It is absolutely, absolutely challenging. And so much of the challenges that happen and for students that go on in the lives of our kids are not so much about what's happening in the class, it's what's happening between the classes. And what we'd like to be able to say is that, what if we got rid of the bells? What if we lengthened the day? What if we in fact kept kids for a longer period of time to do deeper learning with a more nurturing kind of environment with collaborative teams? Those pieces, I think, are key, and I think a lot of the research and the data and the student data also shows they want to work together. And I think that would be one of the things that I'd say. Anyone else, Denise?
I've been teaching grade 8s for almost 30 years. One of the things I try to establish as quickly as possible is their comfort level, right? Because this is the big house. And the concept of being a part of a team, I believe, will make a big difference. What they're used to is the same teacher all day long. And in a project-based learning environment, they have that. Okay, that's one of the differences, is that, and I don't think we've made that clear tonight, is that the kids would spend the entire year with those of us in the project-based learning team. Okay, so they would identify themselves to the one, or in this case, our model is kind of adjusting on the fly. We'll have the kids in pods, where I would be responsible for my usual 30 kids. But today, literally, my 30 kids change every block. Okay. In project-based learning, I would be aware of those kids every day. They would be in the same learning environment as me all day long, which is very similar to elementary. So that's where the transition, I believe, is very smooth. And that they would belong as a member of a team. And lastly, one of the things I recently experimented with, and many of us are doing that, is how to teach critiquing of other peers' work. And I've been doing that as a teacher for a long time. But the models that came out of our research, what we were recommended to try and do and present it in this way, I took the most challenging class I have right now, 26 boys in grade 9 and 4 girls. Severe learning disabilities in that group. Behavioral issues up the wazoo, right? I'm asking them to critique each other's work. We have a motto: we leave no man behind. So when the ones that are capable are done, they go back and they help the ones that need to be pulled up. When we critique the work, I was really scared to death of doing that because I never know what they're going to say. I presented the model, which is 3 easy steps, explained the purpose, why we're doing it. I can teach you so much, but you can learn a lot more from each other. It's the feedback that's important. I think it's going to make a much more comfortable environment for the grade 8s, because I am so very proud of that grade 9 class. They have done an amazing job. Ben is here tonight because of the 3-week project that we did on what career he'd like to do, and his presentation was so excellent, it made me think he should be here tonight. He's our videographer. Let's get him some experience doing what he wants to do now, not wait till the end of grade 12. And Albert, who helped us win the video by editing the video, is the sensei and I forget the other little guy. So they're teaching each other because Albert's about to graduate and we're going to pass it forward. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Did that help a bit? Okay. Yes?
Hi, I'm interested to know exactly what a group project would look like.
Well, I'm going to ask our high-tech high visitors to respond to that, because I know that they saw multiple projects. Mr. Christensen, in the back of the room.
Hi, back here. I'm Scott Christensen, one of the counselors. I did go to High Tech High, and I think a lot of times the projects, when I went down there, the notion of the group project, students working together, a lot of times it was a class discussion, and then the students would go off and working on their individual things, helping each other. So they looked very different in different circumstances. Sometimes it was 2 or 3 students working together. Sometimes it was one student working on their own individualized project, but pulling in other students with the critique process, with those type of things. We saw one project down there, and it was a group of 4 or 5 students, and it was a kind of a social studies math combined, and they were looking at how to make bike routes safer in San Diego. And they showed us the critique process. So it was only 3 or 4 students, but the whole class worked on it. In the critique process, they showed us the first one, and we went through the process as well in terms of critiquing it. And then they showed us the second step. And the second step was actually a lot worse than the first step. So then that one, because they tried to put too much into it, and then the third step, the fourth step, until we saw the final project, and it was amazing that process. So I think when we talk about the group projects, a lot of times there's that, I think in the traditional schools, I used to teach social studies and English before as a counselor, there's a lot of apprehension sometimes around that group project in terms of, am I going to have to pull the other students along? Am I doing all the work and somebody else isn't there? That flexibility, I think, is inherent in the system with the project-based learning, and allows those students that flexibility to have some say in how that will look, but also having that support of the team, of the students around them to help them excel and make it better in whatever format that they choose to go with that. And I think that's what we talked about at the beginning too, in terms of what's inherent in our workplace. We all do individual tasks in our work, and we also collaborate a lot in our work. And those are some of those 21st century skills that we're trying to promote with this model and with this system to get students to that point. I think one other thing that I was thinking about from the last question, from Sharon's question as well, when I went down to High Tech High, I went with my counselor's hat on, and High Tech High, I mean, it's world famous, so I kind of had this notion of like, what type of students are here? It's a lottery system to get into High Tech High, but it's rigged a little bit by zip code. It's meaning that they take students from all over San Diego. They have to apply to want to go to High Tech High, but it's not your cream of the crop students. In fact, they had a higher proportion of special ed students at High Tech High than they did for the state average. The other part of my counseling was, well, what about university? Because maybe universities aren't here. So how are your students doing when they're going off to post-secondary? And we know that's a large focus of our community here at Dover as well. They make the students write entrance exams for university. They don't have to go to university if they don't want to, but High Tech High has the policy that you're going to at least write the exam, and they get 100% acceptance into university based on their SAT scores. So even though they're in that non-traditional system and going into a traditional system, they're still being very successful in that. And the teachers reported that when they connected with their students once they've gone off to university, they said, what was the adjustment from going from this system to the university system? And they said that there was often going in a first-year class to 400 students into a lecture hall, and they said that it was an adjustment to go to that more traditional system. But what they said was they felt they adjusted much quicker than any other student, because they had the confidence to go and talk to the professor at office hours, or talk to the TA when there was office hours. They had those individual 21st century skills and that confidence to kind of take control. Whereas I remember when I went to university, that took me about 1.5 years to get used to. I kind of learned the system, gained my confidence, and I was a much stronger student at university, say in my second half of my second year, third, fourth year, fifth year, I kind of had it figured out. I think in that one, those students are gaining those skills, those individual skills to be successful there. And I think those are all types of things that would come back to those things that they pick up along in the project-based learning and those 21st century learning.
guess that's my concern, is where does the introverted child fit into the 21st century when that's a huge concern. It's not a quiet kid, and they're thrown into this team. How does it work for them?
There's flexibility.
Mr. Nelson?
My daughter's in grade 5. Not just writing tests, but presentations. Like she's in French immersion. They do all that kind of stuff. So she does all her discours, her public speaking stuff in front of 2 or 3 friends at lunch. She doesn't do it in front of. I think I've seen 3 of her things that she's done because she doesn't want us anywhere near around. But I'm convinced that this environment will be fantastic for her because that support from 4 teachers instead of 8 or 9 or 10, that feeling of going off from a group of 30 kids to a school of 1,300. Now she's going from a group of 30 kids to a group of 30 kids that interacts with another 30 and another 30 and another 30. She's bright, but like you said, introverted, anxious. I think she will do extremely well in this situation, and I wouldn't say that because, just because I'm a teacher in it, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't put my own kid through that, unless I actually believed that she would do well in that situation, right? So, that's not going to help, but that's what I believe, and I have a child in that situation. So I think that support that Denise was talking about, all those things, they will be fantastic for her.
I think along the lines of that support as well, because we have homeroom going day that starts the first week, get the timetables out, get a locker in place to the administrative stuff that we have to do. Whereas in the project-based learning, when they do get potted, they're getting tagged with the teacher. So that one teacher would not teach them all their subjects, but that one teacher would be their go-to person that they're going to have. And in our current system, I bet you if you asked, 70% of our students, because we hand out report cards or whatever, go to your homeroom class. They are down in the counseling center saying, "Where's my homeroom again?" Because that happens in September and happens in February, and when they pick the pictures up in October, and that's pretty much all they have. In this new system, they will have that pod of 30. They'll have different teachers, but they have that one go-to person all the time. Parents have that one go-to person to check in with the progress because the teachers are interacting, the students are interacting, and that piece is there. And I think that will help students, like what Dave was talking about as well, is just having that connection. That was one really powerful thing that I came away from High Tech High with, was the fact that the teachers had their core group that they met with I think 3 times a week they met as a kind of little homeroom group, and the teachers had all met the parents. They did at their system. They said our teachers have all been in our students' kitchen, because in the first week they met all the parents. They went out and met all the parents, and we'll have a similar system in terms of that connection, that advisory group with that one, and I think that will also help that quite a bit as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, I know, because I'm glad that Tim Davies here as well from Learning Alternatives, because I know Tim and I have worked together a little bit in the past, and Tim is instrumental in bringing the advisory model into Learning Alternatives at a 15-to-1 ratio or 15-to-2 ratio. It's all about building those relationships.
The class that I tested the critiquing out on, there were 4 girls and 26 guys, and they're grade 9, so developmentally not necessarily as secure as they will be in a few years. And one of the girls never has given a public presentation and told me she would throw up if she had to. So I talked to her about the critique process that's recommended, and we talked about why we do it. It's not that I'm showing you what I made, a typical traditional presentation. Here's my report on Russia. The purpose of doing the presentation is to get the feedback